Mangwanani Mwalelepo Vukenjani Klas Vanave Africa. Welcome to Africa Good Morning, the news and current affairs show bringing you everything you need to know happening on the African continent and beyond. You are joined by Ashwin Bedi and Diana Master one day after Africa Day. How are you, Diana?
I am doing amazing. How are you doing?
Fantastic. How was your Africa Day?
Africa Day was amazing. I was actually a little sad that I wasn't on the show.
Oh.
Because I mean, last year we did do the show together, and we spoke about why we love being African.
Yes,
and
indeed.
Yeah, just that's basically it.
Right,
How was your Africa Day?
Oh, it was lovely. As you know, I was on the show. I enjoyed it.
You enjoyed it?
Yes, I did indeed.
Now let's get into what you can expect in today's broadcast. Bouncer sprayed substance inside overcrowded Enyobeni tavern, locked it and fled, SA court hears. After delays, voters stay overnight at Beira registration post. This is according to CIP Mozambique Elections. And Ukraine minister urges end of African neutrality in Russian war. We're also going to be crossing over to Zambia, and we speak to Mr. Mike Sichula. Stay tuned.
To another exciting episode of Irongo Talk. Jullie is weer en vertel ook vir julle waar die vis heel moontlik kan byt.
Let's get into the top stories on Africa Good Morning. An Enyobeni tavern bouncer discharged a pepper spray-like substance inside an overcrowded establishment, resulting in 21 patrons suffocating and crushing each other to death on 26 June 2022. This was the testimony of a witness during the trial against Enyobeni tavern owners Sia Kangela and Vuyokazi Ndevu. The couple stand accused of contravening the Liquor Act for allegedly selling alcohol to underage children or coercing employees to sell it to minors. 12 girls and 9 boys died at the tavern that night. Nalom Tizana, one of 10 witnesses lined up by the state to give evidence in court, told Magistrate Kevin von Braat on Wednesday that the bouncer locked the door and fled. She claimed that Sia Kangela Ndevu also witnessed patrons dropping dead on the floor, but did nothing.
Now moving over, after delays, voters stay overnight at Beira registration post. This is according to CIP Mozambique Elections. With only a few days before the end of the registration period, in Munava neighborhood of Beira, voters are beginning to stay overnight at the voter registration post, as the photos show. This is intended to ensure that they have a place in the queue to register the following day. Club of Mozambique correspondents in Beira visited at around midnight the posts at the São José da Munava Secondary School and the Makombe EPC in the same neighborhood. Many citizens were sleeping in the queues, as the photographs show. Brigade members seem to have woken from their sleep in Beira, and now they're trying to make up for lost time after a period in which they tried to block opposition voters on the orders of the STAE district director, who has now been suspended.
Now, Ukraine Foreign Minister Dmytro Kuleba has urged African countries to end their neutral stance over Russia's invasion as he embarks on a second tour of the continent. Now, by being neutral towards the Russian aggression against Ukraine, you project your neutrality to the violation of borders and mass crimes that may occur very close to you, he said during a press conference in Ethiopia's capital Addis Ababa on Wednesday. Mr. Kuleba noted, however, that Ukraine's relations with African countries did not receive proper attention in their foreign policy for years, and we lost a lot. He held talks with Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed, African Union Commission Chair Moussa Faki, and Comoros President Azali Assoumani, who is the current AU chair. 6 African countries led by South Africa are leading a peace initiative between Moscow and Kyiv as the war negatively impacts grain and fertilizer supplies in the region, while the majority of countries have consistently condemned Russia's invasion during deliberations at the UN. Abstentions by various African countries have sparked Western criticism.
Moving over, Zimbabwe to regulate carbon credit markets to curb greenwashing. Zimbabwe's government will closely regulate voluntary carbon offset trading in a bid to curb greenwashing and ensure benefits for local communities, its environment minister has said. The global $2 billion voluntary carbon offset market involves companies buying credits from emission-reducing projects such as renewable energy or planting trees to offset their own emissions. Zimbabwe says organizations operating carbon credit projects in the country were largely unregulated rejected as they were only registered with local councils and traditional community leaders, a result of which there's no reliable data on the size of Zimbabwe's carbon market. The government now wants all carbon projects to be registered with authorities within the next 2 months. It will take 50% of all revenue from carbon projects, with foreign investors limited to 30% and the balance of 20% going to local communities, Zimbabwe's Environment and Climate Minister Mangaliso Ndlovu said late on Monday.
And China's embassy in Kenya has denied the Reuters news agency report that hackers from the Asian nation attacked key state agencies in Nairobi, including the presidency, to assess whether the country would service billions of dollars owed to Beijing. Reuters had reported that years-long cyber attacks started in 2019 when the Chinese started closing credit taps to Kenya as debt strains started showing. But in a statement on Wednesday, the Chinese embassy said the report was far-fetched and sheer nonsense. Hacking is a common threat to all countries, and China is also a victim of a cyber attack, it added. That brings us to the end of our top stories on Africa Good Morning. After the break, we cross over to Mike Sichula in the Real Africa, Zambia.
As mens praat van die uitvoerende kunste in Namibië, vertel vir ons van jou kinderdae en jou skooljare. Hoe het jy op die verhoog beland?
Welkom by my huis. Ek is eintlik 'n introvert.
Hierdie week in Namibië se geskiedenis.
Dit maak tyd vir iets wat lekker is in die lewe.
Ons ontdek die mense agter die titels en die beroepe.
Now we cross on over to Zambia to speak to Mr. Mike Sichula as he updates us on the latest news that side. Good morning, Mr. Sichula.
I'm very well, thank you. Africa, good morning.
Now getting into your first story, athlete Muzala Samukonga was honored with the President's insignia of Meritorious Award for his outstanding performance in athletics. Tell us about this.
Yes. Samukonga is one of many other Zambians that have been honored by President Hakainde Hichilema. Mr. Muzala has been honored for his outstanding achievements in sport, and that has been attracted recognition of Zambia in the world. He is the reigning Commonwealth champion, and he also won a gold medal in Botswana. So he was one of those Zambians that were honored. Other Zambians who were honored is a man of Chipata district in the eastern region who was attacked by a leopard, and he single-handedly killed that leopard together with his dog. So he was one of those that was honored. So during the observation of the Africa Freedom Day, President Hakainde Hichilema also pardoned over 1,530 inmates from various prisons in Zambia to mark Africa Freedom Day. The pardoned prisoners included over 1,400 ordinary inmates, and among other 8 prisoners. So it was one of those events that every year when Africa commemorates Africa Freedom Day, people are honored, and President Hakainde Hichilema did the same. But he also called on African leaders to enhance trade amongst themselves in order to observe and also actualize Africa Freedom Day.
All right, now a Catholic priest is under verbal attack from UPND party after he apparently downplayed a message from the president.
Yes, the Father Serengeti, during Mass, that's him there in the picture, former president. So after this, he did downplay a presidential speech President Hichilema issued to the government. So President Hichilema, when he addressed members of the press and also members of the international community, he used a graph to explain how Zambia is improving its economic performance. But that presentation of the graph, according to the priest, he said that does not matter to people living in poverty. People want to eat and they don't want to listen to graphs. So that message has attracted strong and sharp criticism from members of the opposition, the ruling party, UPND, who have issued verbal attacks on the priest. And a number of people are saying even government ministers have said what the priest said was not good, because the church and the government should have one agenda to support national development. But if a priest is going to use the pulpit to condemn or downplay a message that the president has issued, then it does not go hand in hand in what the church and the government needs to do. But even the other Catholic Church movement has somehow distanced itself from what the priest said. But him, as the priest who issued this statement, he has not said anything about it.
All right, now, Mr. Sichula, moving on, we understand that more Ethiopian immigrants were arrested. Please give us the details.
Yes, like I've always been reporting here on Africa Good Morning, Zambia is one of those transit points for immigrants going to South Africa. I also have a video about this, if maybe that video can be played as I explain. So the immigration department has detained 28 male suspected Ethiopian immigrants. The immigrants were picked up in the early hours of yesterday. They were found hidden in a house in Isoka district, which is up north Zambia. So according to the immigration department's officer Namanti Shika, the 28 were arrested during an operation with other security wings after a tip-off from a concerned member of the public. So the number of immigrants passing through Zambia is way too much, and authorities seem not they're not relenting to ensure that it is brought to an end. But it doesn't seem it is something that will come to an end easily, because the border points, for instance, in between Zambia and Tanzania, they're somehow porous. Even the one between Zambia and Malawi, they're somehow porous. So it is easy for immigrants to come in through those border points and find their way into South Africa.
All right, Mike, sorry we couldn't play that video for you, but certainly the image says 1,000 words. Now, in your last story, what was the result between Barcelona legends and Chipolopolo legends as they took on each other yesterday in Zambia?
Well, that match was hugely attended at the National Heroes Stadium. It was packed to rafters. The stadium was just jam-packed. And the result ended 3-0 in favor of the Zambian legends, who were led by 1998 Africa Footballer of the Year, Karusha Warrior. The Barcelona legend was star-studded with Ronaldinho in the mix, and other Barcelona legends like Patrick Kluivert and Mendieta. But however, the Zambian legend managed to pick out a 3-0 victory over the legends. And I would agree with Patrick Kluivert, who said some of the Zambian players that were used were very fitter than them, and they could not match how they were playing. So the scholars in that match was James Chamanga, Collins Mbesuma, who is in South Africa, and also Clifford Mulenga, who was once voted Young African Footballer of the Year. So it was a well-entertainment day for many Zambians. And this week, Zambia is in the highly of activities in terms of entertainment. We have Kofi Olomide, there's also Master KG, and also Nasty C from South Africa, including the Ghetto Kids from Uganda. They're all in Zambia. So this week is full of entertainment.
Love, love, love to see it, and I can only imagine what that does for the great national spirit of Zambia. Thank you very much, Mike, for bringing us the news stories from the real Africa.
Thank you very much. Have a blessed weekend. Africa, good morning.
Africa, good morning indeed. Let's have a look at the weather predictions.
Now, with 7 years to go before Vision 2030, the National Planning Commission gives insight into achieving the goal. This is part 2 of a 2-part series.
To another exciting episode of Toby Violet. Hier is die weer en vertel ook vir julle waar die vis heel moontlik kan byt.
With Vision 2030 7 years away, is this project still viable?
Yeah, not in its entirety, not in its fullest of the aggregate of all the 8 themes. For I view it as a developmental undertaking or program, just because it has several programs or areas it needs to address as expected outcomes. The first of which is, of course, of those themes is macroeconomic environment. And that for the last better part of 2 years and the periods before, it's work in progress, it's an ongoing undertaking given where the economy got to, given that there was a period of, in the latter part of the program of COVID, we've gone through an ADA period of almost lack of growth, having tumbled from a very steep growth and a heightened expenditure as we try and address the many challenges the country faces. But between 2004 and now, or before I get there, so that's the first theme. The second one being natural resources and the environment, peace and political stability. Third, the external environment, of course, those around us, friends and everybody, friendly countries, and who we trade with, population, health and development, of which we now know, inequality and social welfare, knowledge, information and technology, human resources development, and industrial capacity. So all of these, I tend to look at them as poignant, required, needed to be addressed. The question is, so many of them, and how were they structured to strategically achieve within the 5 or 6 national development plans? Was this a loading of too many of them without the appropriate resources, both technological, finance, human, and otherwise, to be able to deal with them? But if one steps back to 1990 and perhaps the period 91, 2000, you remember this was a government that was newly set up in those first 10 years, 15 years. So a lot of what Namibia was in 1990 to where we are today, it's not the same country. It's a country that has changed for much of the time for better. So there must be an acknowledgement of that. So when one goes back to 2004 and you get back to where Namibia is today, so it speaks to much of the challenges not having been addressed, but significant visible change, both in terms of the life or the living standards of people, the physical change of the country, the policy environment in addressing a lot of what we may have gone through, both through an economy, and especially the fact that economic growth in much of that period, although it did not meet the set targets of 6% average economic growth, that we fell short of. But between 3.5% and maybe 5%, that actually happened.
All right, let's dive straight into the economic news story. Starting off in Mozambique, the Mozambican government will, by the 30th of June, deliver a list of products and services that will be exempt from customs duties as part of the process of joining the African Continental Free Trade Area. The work has already been completed and we will submit our tariff offer to the AfCFTA Secretariat by June 30, said the Minister of Industry and Commerce, Silvino Moreno, quoted by Noticase, the state-run daily in the largest circulation in Mozambique. Now, the minister explained that the document is still to be delivered to AfCFTA lists the prices of products and services that Mozambique will place on the market and exempt from customs fees under the terms of the treaty.
Now, Hyphen and Namibia agreed to next phase of a $10 billion green hydrogen project. Hyphen Hydrogen Energy has signed a deal with the government of Namibia for the next phase of a $10 billion green hydrogen project that will export to Europe once complete, the two parties said on Wednesday. Hyphen, whose shareholders include Germany-headquartered Enyobeni, was announced as a preferred bidder in 2021 for the project in the Namib Desert's South Clyde National Park. The plant will produce 2 million tons of green ammonia a year for regional and global markets when it reaches full-scale output, which is anticipated before 2030.
All right, let's head into the economic indicators and we'll be back with the highlights.
You're still watching Africa Good Morning. Let's get into the highlights from today's broadcast. Bouncer sprayed substance inside overcrowded Enyobeni tavern, locked it and fled, court hears. After delays, voters stay overnight at Beira registration posts, according to CIP Mozambique Elections. Ukraine minister urges end of African neutrality in Russia war. In economics, Mozambique to submit tariff offer to AFCFTA by June.
And a little bit of a quick sport update. Manchester United qualified for the Champions League yesterday, and the Windhoek Draft Velvetjes will be taking on Boland in Namibia at the Hage Geingob Stadium tomorrow as they continue to prepare for the Rugby World Cup. That brings us to the end of our show. We'll certainly be back next week, same time, same place. The repeat is at 8:30, NTV and all Namibia Media Holdings platforms. Swera Jaganaka.